Canada is taking on a brand new tariff fight tonight as Donald Trump comes back with his latest threat. How tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum could devastate businesses here at home.
And local leaders respond to the uncertainty. We have reaction from the mayors of Hamilton, Toronto, and Niagara Falls this hour.
And we've got all the highlights from Super Bowl Sunday, everything from the big game to Kendrick Lamar's fierce halftime show.
This is Live at 5. Good evening. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thank you for joining us on Live at 5. Only days after breathing a sigh of relief, Canadians have a new problem to worry about tonight. Donald Trump, he is back with a new tariff threat, and this one could bring the country's steel and aluminum sectors to their knees.
CP24's Beatrice Vaisman is following the latest on Trump's promise to impose a 25% duty on all steel and aluminum. And Beatrice, Trump's expected to sign executive orders this hour.
5:25, Bakari Alina, is when we're expecting to see or hear from U.S. President Donald Trump as he signs these executive orders. He has promised that these 25% tariffs are coming on steel and aluminum, tariffs against all Canadian imports. And certainly if this happens, it would have tremendous, just devastating impact on these industries in this country. This morning, CP24 Breakfast spoke with Hamilton's Mayor, Andrea Horwath. There's several steel plants, Dofasco, Stelco, in the Hamilton area. And she talked about the fact that not only would it, put thousands of jobs in limbo, but it would cost her community in Hamilton about $1 billion. Now multiply that by so many other parts of this country, Sault Ste. Marie, Quebec, out in Saskatoon and Western Canada and British Columbia, a lot of these steel manufacturers who would really be hit extraordinarily hard if these tariffs do come into place. When you look at the stats, certainly according to the Government of and American Iron and Steel Institute data, the largest sources of U.S. steel imports are Canada, Brazil, and Mexico. And by a large margin, Canada is the largest supplier of primary aluminum metal to the United States, accounting for roughly 79% of total imports in the first 11 months of 2024. Keep in mind, back in 2018, Donald Trump, who was president back then as well, was part of the negotiations for the new NAFTA deal, the USMCA. When it was officially came into works in 2020, he called it a beautiful treaty. Well, effectively today, if he imposes these tariffs, he'll be ripping up this treaty and sending both economies, that's the reality, not just Canada's economy, but both economies into a tailspin as they figure out how to deal with these tariffs. And so today we've been talking to various industry leaders. You'll hear first from the president and CEO of the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, along with the president and CEO of the Canadian Steel Producers Association, who talk about the deep impacts this would have.
$20 billion of trade and significant economic activity, a 25% tariff, and then a very hard-hitting and impactful retaliatory tariff regime on the United States from us will have negative consequences and will do harm on both sides of the border. And, that's the disappointing thing. We have so much opportunity to work together and to stand strong against the real challenges of the steel industry, which is global overcapacity from unfair traders. And instead, we're fighting each other. And that's just a shame.
Steel comes in many different forms, many different grades. Over the last 30 years, Canada and the U.S., and to a degree Mexico, have vertically integrated so that Canada produces some grades, the U.S. produces other grades. Similar with aluminum. Some aluminum sheet is made here, and some aluminum parts are made in the States. The problem becomes there isn't a clear substitute. So what happens is everyone will have to absorb these costs. It's not like American steel producers or American aluminum producers can suddenly, or not even suddenly, even in the near term, change and say, okay, we can take up that slack. The reason Canada exports so much to the U.S. in these areas, in these critical metals, is because the U.S. needs the capacity. They can't do it themselves.
And so one of the questions Catherine Cobden there from the Canadian Steel Producers Association asked, if not us, then who? She talked about the fact that there's 123,000 jobs across this country in the steel and aluminum sectors. They would be deeply, deeply impacted. She talked about $20 billion of trade happening annually between the two countries with steel and aluminum. that would deeply be impacted as well. And a lot of business leaders now, Lena and Bakari, saying, how are we doing business with someone who is so incredibly volatile, who keeps moving the goalposts and changing the game despite essentially promising to pause tariffs until March 1st. So coming up, 5:25, we'll wait and see what exactly is in black and white in these executive orders. But a lot of people holding their breaths, waiting to see exactly that.
Okay, Beatrice Faisman watching the story very closely for us tonight. Thank you, Beatrice. Now, Niagara Falls Mayor Jim Diodati joined us live this morning to talk about how his city could be impacted by the U.S. tariffs.
We're very, very concerned about what could happen. I mean, first of all, the most obvious is tourism. Right now, Niagara Falls being the #1 leisure destination in Canada, typically 25% of our visitation comes from Americans, and they represent 50% of the revenue into Niagara Falls. So we're concerned, and I know in Canada, it's not an anti-American sentiment, it's a pro-Canadian. And I think it's more about patriotism, and we don't want it to turn into tit for tat.
And Diodati says that the lower dollar, it could bring more American tourists to Canada, but some might avoid coming to Canada if they don't feel welcome.
Okay, turning now to another snowstorm on its way to the GTA.
CP24's meteorologist Bill Coulter is forecasting 15 to 25 centimeters of snow Wednesday afternoon into Thursday. Environment Canada has issued a special weather statement and says there's also a chance of freezing rain.
5:06 -5. Let's get a check on the evening commute with CP24's traffic specialist Adjoa and Siaya Bois. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about active weather tonight, Adj.
Yeah, we're pretty clear weather-wise. In terms of your drive-wise, very slow, and a couple of problems hindering the drive. So we'll start with these issues that are happening on the DVP northbound. It's the exit ramp that takes you to southbound Don Mills, partially blocked because of the stall, so making it a little bit harder for drivers to get off that ramp. And then if you're on the 401 westbound, pretty busy from Yonge Street, both core and collectors, out towards Dixon Martin Grove. Just on the approach, collision involving a truck does have a piece of that right lane blocked. They were fully in the right lane, but they're trying to squeeze over to that bullnose. And on the southbound 410, it's been slow all afternoon long. It's because of this emergency road work. Southbound 410 ramp that takes you onto the eastbound 401, that left lane is out, which means it's only the right lane that is getting by for drivers through this area. In North York, we're crews on scene of a collision blocking lanes on Bathurst, just south of Drury. I'll send it back to you both.
Okay, Adjoa, thank you. The latest now on the provincial election. Nightly polling by Nanos for CTV News shows the Ontario Liberals continue to gain ground on the Conservatives.
According to the latest numbers, the PCs have 43.8% support. That's a 13-point lead over the Liberals. And support for the Liberals jumped 2.5 points to 30.9%. New Democrats dropped a point to 18.8%, while the Greens sit at 4%.
Now, the Nanos survey finds nearly 4 in 10 respondents believe Doug Ford is the best choice for Premier, followed by Bonnie Crombie at 25.6%, Marit Stiles at just under 15%, and Mike Schreiner at 4.7%. Election Day in Ontario is February 27th, and advanced polls will be open from the 20th to the 22nd. Nick Nanos joined us live this morning to talk more about these latest numbers.
I think if you're a Liberal, you're probably really happy with those numbers, but I think it's a little too early to say whether it's momentum. You know, in the nightly tracking that we do with CP24 and CTV News, you know, at the beginning, the Conservatives had a 16-point advantage. Now it's a 13-point advantage. We'll see whether that continues. You know, some of the key races, you know, in Toronto, it's still a neck-and-neck race between the Progressive Conservatives and the Liberals. Even in the GTA, you know, the margin between the Progressive Conservatives and the Liberals is now only 10 percentage points. Those are two kind of big swaths of seats for both parties that are actually critical.
And provincial party leaders were talking about tariffs and health care on the campaign trail today.
That's right. CP24's Phil Perkins has the latest on this. Phil.
Lena Bakari, you know, during the weekend, Nanos Research also released a poll on around 900 Ontarians and listing up the top 3 issues they had on mind. And the number 1 was healthcare. So it makes sense that all the party leaders were out there today on the campaign trail trying to focus on healthcare and how they're going to be improving that. Marit Stiles is saying today that they're going to be adding, if elected as Premier, 15,000 more nurses at a cost of $1.5 billion over the next 4 years. Bonnie Crombie, who we're going to hear from shortly, saying she wants to add 3,100 more doctors over the next 4 years if elected. The PC is saying that they want to bring on 305 more medical teams. not exactly sure how many medical experts that includes. That's at a cost of $1.8 billion. Still trying to figure out the Green Party's plan for improving healthcare in this province, because it is an issue. 2.5 million Ontarians currently don't have a primary care person in their lives, whether that's a doctor or a nurse practitioner. So here is Bonnie Crombie earlier today talking about her promises.
If we hire more family doctors with our plan, we're going to recruit 3,100 new doctors. We're going to attract them back to the profession. We're going to create more spaces in medical schools, but also in residency programs. We're going to get foreign-trained doctors through the mentorship program. That's the technical name is the Practice Ready Ontario. And when we say foreign-trained doctors, some of those foreign-trained doctors are our own children who have gone to medical school in the United States or in the UK or abroad, that we need to bring them back. And so when we have more doctors and everyone has access to a family doc, they won't be going to the ER. They won't be going to the hospital for treatment.
If you don't protect the economy, you can't put the investments of $33 billion more into healthcare, which we've done, the $50 billion more into hospitals, if you don't have an economy. So we have to protect the people's jobs here until they can pay their taxes. And by the way, I've never increased taxes since I've been elected, never will. But they're going to pay taxes that will help for healthcare, help for education, help for social services, and most importantly, help the infrastructure to build the highways and the roads and the transit that we need.
And the third topic that Ontarians are really focused on in this provincial election is the Donald Trump tariff threat. Now, before that was before these 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel potentially could be happening this half hour. And so with that, some of the leaders did pivot, Bakari and Lena. Premier Ford talking in Oakville today, said he spoke with the heads of Stelco and Dofasco. He's actually going to Washington, D.C. tomorrow to speak with delegates who are close to the President of the United States, and also Merit Stiles saying that she spoke with some steel workers in Hamilton. Back to you, too.
Okay, Phil, thank you for this. It's now 5:11, -5 out there, and you're watching Live at 5.
And coming up, we're following the latest reaction when it comes to Donald Trump's latest threat over tariffs. More on what Toronto officials are saying. That's next. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he'll impose 25% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum today. That's a move that could have a major economic impact.
And CP24's Melissa Duggan joins us live from City Hall, where the tariff threat continues to grab attention. Melissa.
Yeah, that's right. And right now at City Hall, by the way, I think normally we'd be looking ahead to tomorrow's City Council meeting. That's when City Council is going to consider Mayor Olivia Chow's 2025 budget, something that includes a 6.9% property tax hike, something we're certainly covering. But today we're getting reaction to this new threat of tariffs coming from U.S. President Donald Trump. Mayor Olivia Chow was asked about it today, and she acknowledges that this would have a tremendous impact on our neighbors in Hamilton, also pockets throughout the GTA. Also, she was talking about Quebec, the impacts that it would have there. As for specifically in Toronto, she says that is something that needs to be analyzed. And she's also looking ahead to what she's calling just the next 4 years of chaos coming from the U.S. I want to share more of what Chow had to say today.
There's been a briefing note precisely about what we should or should not do. I like to follow our financial team because we paid good money for getting good work. This is the same financial teams that see our credit rating go up first time in 2 decades. Why would I not follow their advice, right? So, yes, things are going to be chaotic because of a senseless trade action from the United States of America. But as I said, we are strong, we're ready, we'll defend ourselves, we'll protect each other.
That would provide urgent relief of more than $10,000 on average for our nearly 3,500 manufacturers grappling with this economic uncertainty. And it would be funded entirely by the Tax Stabilization Reserve Account, which exists precisely for emergencies like this. And make no mistake, the trade war is an emergency. Ask any of the businesses or the 125,000 workers with their jobs on the line, This is not just a rainy day, Mayor Chow. This is a hurricane.
And so that response there from Councillor Brad Bradford on how to respond to these possible tariffs. And again, we're waiting about 10 minutes away now from when we could be hearing from Trump on this latest threat of 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum into the U.S. As for tomorrow's budget meeting, that begins at 9:30 here at City Hall. And Bakari and Lena, we are expecting to hear from Mayor Olivia Chow ahead of that. She'll be talking to the media at 9 a.m. Back to you.
All right, 5:25, that is when Donald Trump could be signing an executive order to impose these punishing tariffs on aluminum and steel in our country. Melissa, thanks so much for this. You're watching Live at 5 on Toronto's breaking news, CP24.
Yeah, Justin Trudeau is taking a trip overseas to talk about artificial intelligence. Those details coming right up. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is among the world leaders attending the opening of a two-day global summit on artificial intelligence.
He has said developing more clean electricity to power AI will be a key priority as Canada assumes the presidency of the G7 this year. Heads of state, top government officials, CEOs, and scientists from around 100 countries are taking part. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance is making his first overseas trip since taking office. He's expected to push back on European efforts to tighten AI oversight while advocating for a more open, innovation-driven approach.
It is high time that we move from science fiction to the real world of applications of AI. With its unprecedented potential, artificial intelligence fuels both immense hopes and, at times, exaggerated fear. Today, you will be able, here at the Grand Palais, to see concrete applications and use cases of AI.
The summit gathers major players like Google, Microsoft, OpenAI to foster AI advances in sectors such as health, education, environment, and culture.
Well, tens of thousands of Iranians marked the anniversary of the country's 1979 Islamic Revolution in Tehran.
Many waved Iranian flags while some carried messages reading "Death to Israel" and "Death to America." The annual event marks the end of the rule of the American-backed Mohammad Reza Shah, the last monarch of Iran. The commemoration comes at a time of uncertainty as the country faces crushing sanctions and the threat of more coming from Trump. Well, on Friday, Iran's supreme leader described nuclear negotiations with the U.S. as not intelligent, wise, or honorable.
And Donald Trump said he is serious about wanting Canada to become the 51st state in an interview that aired on Fox during the Super Bowl pre-show. Watch this.
You announced tariffs on Canada and Mexico. You immediately got action from both of them on border security and drug interdiction.
I did. A lot of action.
Is that good enough? Is that good enough?
No, it's not good enough.
So more needed in 30 days.
Something has to happen. It's not sustainable.
And Canada's ambassador to France says threats by U.S. President Donald Trump to invade another country violate international law. Trump has repeatedly said that he wants to see Canada become a U.S. state and confirmed last night that it's not a joke. Trump has also refused to rule out using military force to take over Greenland, which is part of Denmark. Stéphane Dion says that such threats are not normal and violate the UN Charter and warns that other nations could be next.
They were anticipating that. They are working with us about how can we have a cohesive way to convince the U.S. administration that trade wars are painful for everyone, negative for everyone, and not something that you should do between friends.
Dion says it's important for Canada to expand its trade options in the wake of the U.S. tariffs.
It's 5:22, holding at 5 below zero. This is Live at 5.
The Super Bowl spectacle has come to an end for another year, but fans are still talking about the big game and the entertainment. Those highlights are next.
You really about to do it? 40 acres and a mule. This is bigger than the music. You really about to do it? Yeah, they tried to rig the game.
The Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles, they went toe-to-toe in the Super Bowl, and the city of brotherly love came out on top.
For the second time, the Vince Lombardi Trophy is headed to Philadelphia. Eagles fly in Super Bowl.
It was an absolute beatdown from start to finish for the Eagles in the 40-22 win. Philadelphia jumped out to a 24-0 lead at halftime, never looked back, ending Kansas City's chances of becoming the first franchise in NFL history to win 3 straight Lombardi trophies. The Eagles getting redemption for a Super Bowl loss against the Chiefs 2 years ago.
Well, Kendrick Lamar became the first solo hip-hop artist to headline the Super Bowl halftime show.
Looking for the broccoli, hot key, keep a horn on me that could see.
He was joined by Samuel L. Jackson and SZA during his 13-minute performance. Lamar included his hit diss track of Drake, Not Like Us, which has prompted a lawsuit against Universal Music Group. So he did it after lots of speculation. Producer Mustard and tennis superstar Serena Williams appeared on stage during that song.
And also performing Kendrick Lamar's halftime show was detained on the field and could face charges after unfurling a flag with Sudan and Gaza written on it. Police say they're working to determine applicable charges in this incident. The NFL said that the performer hid the flag and then unveiled it late in the show, and that no one involved in the production was aware of it. So Rock Nation, the entertainment company which produced the show, said that it was not part of the production.
Well, some people watched for the game, just for the commercials. Companies shelled out millions for a 30-second spot.
Susan Charles with YouTube Canada says that they get their money's worth in the weeks leading up to the Super Bowl.
By the time that the NFC and the AFC championship games ended 2 weeks ago, we started to see our first teasers. Stella Artois was teasing who is the other David, who is David Beckham's brother, immediately afterwards. And then from that point until last night, and then this is going to continue for days, people are going to be engaging with these ads, again, looking at the teasers, the actual ads. And most of these ads have extended cuts and behind the scenes and even interviews with the talent, interviews with those actors. So we can satisfy every curiosity that we'd ever had about those ads, the halftime show, the game, anything.
And Team Fluff clawed its way to victory to defeat Team Rough at the 21st annual Puppy Bowl.
Foxtrot resets. Runs right. Jukes left. The 10. Touchdown.
Well, the game came down to the very last play, but a Labrador Retriever mix named Paws Allen scored to give Fluff the 68-66 win. This year's Most Valuable Puppy Award went to Border Collie Foxtrot, who finished with 3 touchdowns. This year's game featured 142 rescue dogs from 80 shelters across 40 states, as well as one from Nicaragua.
My kind of game. 528 -5 out there. You're watching live at 5.
And we're expecting to hear from Donald Trump this evening, with the U.S. president saying that he's set to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum. Stay with us. Canada is taking on a brand new tariff fight tonight as Donald Trump comes back with his latest threat. How tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum could devastate businesses here at home.
And local leaders respond to all this uncertainty. We have reaction coming up.
Plus, tracking exclusive polling numbers. Could Doug Ford's lead over Bonnie Crombie be shrinking?
You're watching Live at 5. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lena Latifat.
I'm Bakari Savage. Only days after breathing a sigh of relief, Canadians have a new problem to worry about tonight. Donald Trump.
Yeah, he is back with a new tariff threat, and this one could bring the country's steel and aluminum sectors to their knees. CP24's Beatrice Faisman is following the latest on Trump's promise to impose a 25% duty on all steel and aluminum, and he could make it official this hour. Beatrice.
He could. We heard that he'd be up at 5:25. Lane and Bakari signing these executive orders. No sign of the U.S. president yet, but certainly a lot of people holding their breath, waiting to see what's going to happen. It comes on the eve of Doug Ford, who's going to be heading down to Washington in his capacity as premier to talk to leaders down there to try to convince them to continue to be loud voices in Donald Trump's ear when it comes to these tariffs. I mean, Canadian business leaders thought they had a bit of extra time up to March 1st to kind of get their ducks in a row to continue talking to lawmakers and decision makers stateside. And then last night aboard Air Force One, Donald Trump kind of dropped this bombshell saying 25% tariffs were coming on all steel and aluminum imports into the United States. When you look at just how much trade Canada and the U.S. does in these sectors, I mean, $20 billion specifically in steel. In fact, we heard from the Canadian Steel Producers Association, who said back in 2018, we saw massive disruptions and harm on both sides of the border, hurting both Americans and Canadians when the initial 25% tariffs on steel, 10% on aluminum were put in place by Donald Trump, who later granted several exemptions, duty-free exemptions to several trading partners, including Canada. When you look at how many jobs are at stake, 123,000 of them in the steel sector as well. So certainly a lot of people concerned about their livelihoods, their mental health, what's going to happen moving forward if these tariffs do indeed get implemented by the U.S. president. So we heard from the United Steelworkers Association talking specifically about the concern over people losing their jobs. And here's what he had to say.
We don't have any Canadian steel companies, right? All of our Canadian steel companies, or so-called Canadian steel companies, are foreign-owned. Stelco here in Hamilton just recently got purchased by Cleveland Cliffs, which is an American company. We have other companies like ArcelorMittal, which is a big multinational, Gerdau, which is a big multinational. Yeah, I mean, we definitely don't have Canadian steel companies, but we definitely have Canadian steel workers. So, I mean, that's what it's all about, is supporting our members, is supporting the workers and the communities that they live in.
Happening out in Hamilton today, a city where it's known as Steel Town for a reason, Lena and Bakari. I mean, the mayor, Andrea Horwath, saying $1 billion in her community is at stake here as well. When it comes to politics, I mean, certainly there's a lot of concern over having a volatile, not only trading partner, but a volatile president who changes his mind and moves the goalposts when it comes to these tariffs. As I mentioned, we thought we had until March 1st. As now he's kind of changed the game in this capacity. So it's making it certainly difficult for business owners, business leaders to kind of figure out what move to take. Should they hire more workers right now, or should they hold off to find out what is actually going to happen here? And when you look at the politics of this all, I spoke to CTV News political commentator Eric Ham, asking him if he believes, living stateside, that Americans are actually aware of the detriment that these tariffs could have on their economy, on consumers, on their businesses. And he didn't think they actually knew the size and scope of what's to come. And here's more from Eric Ham.
I think what we're going to see over the next 4 years is I think we're going to see many countries begin to pivot away from the United States, because it's just not a stable place with Donald Trump at the helm. And I think what this means for the United States is consumers in the U.S. are going to be hit really, really hard, but as well as businesses also. And this is going to have a tremendous impact on the markets. And one way Donald Trump actually defines success under his presidency is based on the markets.
Here's a live look this evening from the city of Hamilton. Again, would be tremendously impacted by these tariffs, as would the province of Quebec. In fact, Quebec's Premier François Legault putting on X, saying Quebec exports 2.9 million tons of aluminum to the U.S. That's 60% of their needs. Do they prefer to get supplies from China? So that's a question a lot of people are asking. If not Canada, then who? Also, when it comes to, like I mentioned, jobs, that's tremendously at stake as well. But the close relationship between the two countries, really the underlying issue at all of this, and how do we move forward with that commander-in-chief in the White House, who, again, changes things depending on which way the wind blows. Lena and Bakari.
Okay, live from the newsroom, CP24's Beatrice Vaisman. Thank you. And potential tariffs on steel and aluminum, they could have a major impact on Hamilton.
Yeah, our Beatrice Vaisman was just talking about that impact. CTV's John Musselman joins us live from the city with the latest reaction. John.
Well, we spent the day here. Really, there's a lot of uncertainty because nobody really knows for sure whether this is going to happen or if the president will make this order effective sometime this evening. In the meantime, as Beatrice mentioned, a lot of the union reps for the United Steelworkers are concerned about obviously what effect this could have, people losing their jobs, possible layoffs, all connected to this possible tariff. Now, we also spoke to the mayor of the city. She says this could have a devastating impact on the community, up to $1 billion, is what Andrea Horwath had to tell us earlier today.
it is going to be very, very difficult for our city for a sustained period of time if those tariffs do come to pass. Who knows what Trump is going to announce today? Who knows what the timing might be? But just the destabilization that this president is causing for my community, it's already devastating. People are worried about their jobs. They're worried about their families. They're worried about being able to make ends meet. That's about $1 billion hit to our local economy. That's big.
So no doubt it could have a big impact here in the Hamilton area, the Hamilton region, and right now they're just in a holding pattern until they hear for sure what's going to happen. Reporting live in Hamilton, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, thank you for this, John. Let's turn to Peter MacKay for more reaction now. He is the former Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Defence. He also served as Canada's Justice Minister under then Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Mr. MacKay, thank you for joining us on the program. It's good to see you, as always. Look, a lot of Canadians are saying the time to retaliate is now. It's something we heard from Pierre Poilievre today. Chrystia Freeland also saying that she would like to see Ottawa respond with dollar-for-dollar retaliation. What would you like to see?
Well, in fact, the president quite often uses the term reciprocity, and retaliatory tariffs are, in fact, reciprocity. I'm a little more sanguine at this point. I do believe that, as we've seen previously, even in this current presidency, Donald Trump changes his mind, and he does so for all kinds of reasons. Perhaps he's getting advice behind the scenes. Perhaps he has a change of heart. We do know that he continues to flood the zone. That is to say, it's announcement after announcement. He has many countries, including Canada, trying to figure out what his next move might be and how to respond. But the reality is this would, and in fact is already starting to impact our country, the certainty. Politicians, businesses, and individuals are very much ill at ease as to what the overall impact will be. So I think clarity and engagement. And by clarity, that means we will have to put in place and determine what products to put tariffs on. And it has to be said, as everyone is repeating, we don't want this. We don't want to engage in a net loss tariff war, which we know is what will happen. Both economies will suffer. Both of our people will suffer significantly. And yet, this is where we find ourselves. And so we have to be prepared, and we have to obviously try to get the provinces and the federal government all working and pulling in the same direction.
Okay, so with a lot of that uncertainty, how do we begin to turn the tables? How do we begin to rethink Canada's economic development? I mean, there's already more talk about having greater interprovincial trade.
Well, that is, in fact, a good thing. And in fact, trying to be optimistic, much of the emphasis that Donald J. Trump has put on border security, on the importance of protecting the North, on the importance of having a strong economy, is rallying the troops, so to speak, in terms of how Canada responds. How do we respond to the Americans? Well, with full-on and forceful engagement. That means as well trying to work with individual states, governors, senators, agencies like chambers of commerce. Part of our problem and part of the weakness that the president smells, if I can put it that way, is that there is a little bit of incoherence and separation between federal and provincial approaches. And not to be partisan, but we have a government that is arguably more focused on a liberal leadership contest than on responding to this crisis. And it's a crisis a day, and reason, in my view, to have a parliament in session where these things can be debated openly in our democratic process in a way that gives Canadians more certainty and gives Americans more certainty.
I just have to ask you, Canada and the U.S. have been such strong allies for a very long time. And a lot of people on this side of the border are saying, this is not how you treat your ally. Will our relationship ever be the same, or has Donald Trump destroyed that forever?
That's a great question. I want to believe, and I do believe, that administrations come and go and that relationship goes up and down, depending in many cases on the character of the president and those around him. We've seen highs and lows before, and we've seen the positives that come from relationships like Mulroney-Reagan, Mulroney-Bush, Chrétien-Clinton. And so that leads me to believe that there are better days ahead. And I also want to believe that we will see when the full administration is in place and all of the confirmation hearings occur, and we know what the opposite team and opposite numbers look like, we'll be able to have more minister-to-minister contact to talk these things through. We have relationships with people like Marco Rubio and others that have been in government for some time. That might lead to a more stable, predictable relationship. But it is going to be about continued engagement and being able to be adept and to respond when we need to. And sometimes that means responding with strength.
Well, also, could the business community circumvent the government and strike their own deals?
Absolutely. Well, I'm not sure about striking deals when it involves legislation or retaliatory tariffs, but they should and could, and I believe are engaging. And look, there is one simple mantra that needs to be repeated, and that is, in order for America to be great again, Canada has to be great again. They need lumber, they need steel, they need aluminum, they need minerals, they need a strong partner in security, they need a strong economic partner. They need somebody to work with closely at the border and to marry up all of our technologies. And so I think that consistent engagement and reminder and demonstration of facts and figures and the products, energy, of course, among them, that will dramatically impact their economy as much, if not worse, than their own over time. And so we do have some cards to play, but this is really a game we don't want to be in.
That is for sure. Former Cabinet Minister Peter MacKay, it is always good to get your thoughts on this. Thanks so much for joining us, and I really appreciate your perspective.
Thank you.
It's 5:43, holding at 5 below zero. This is Live at 5.
Provincial party leaders, they're back on the campaign trail as we get closer to that February 27th election day. We're going to have the latest next. Welcome back. Let's talk about the evening commute now. There are longer wait times than usual for subway trains on Line 1 for the evening rush.
The TTC says that an electrical fire at Wilson Yard, it prevented the deployment of extra trains for rush hour. So as a result, the transit agency says customers will experience estimated wait times of 6 minutes instead of the usual 3 minutes on Line 1. As an alternative, customers can take GO Transit services on a TTC fare within the city limits.
Provincial party leaders were talking about tariffs and healthcare on the campaign trail today.
All right, CP24's Phil Perkins has the latest on the election and joins us live from the newsroom. Phil.
Bakari, Lena, about 900 Ontarians were polled by Nanos Research for CP24 and CTV News about some of the top issues that are going to factor into who they're going to be choosing for the next premier of this province on February 27th. And they said healthcare was number one, the economy number two, and then at third was Donald Trump's tariff threat. So we're going to try to touch base on some of these. And we do understand that healthcare was the number one. It was like 33% of Ontarians said that was a main issue for them. And it makes sense. 2.5 million Ontarians currently do not have a primary care professional, whether it's a nurse practitioner or a physician, and it's understood that about 3 million more will lose their doctors in the future. And so what we know thus far is that the Liberals plan on spending $3.1 billion to hire 3,100 more doctors in the next 4 years if they are elected. Meanwhile, the PCs want to bring on 305 more medical teams. Not sure how many medical professionals that means, but here's what Merritt Stiles had to say about how many nurses she's bringing on. Also, Mike Schreiner talking about shelters.
The Liberals, before this, did start the fire in our healthcare system, but Doug Ford poured gasoline all over it. Hospitals across Ontario are facing extreme pressure, with many emergency rooms having to close their doors. Patients are being treated in hallways because of a severe shortage of nurses.
The Ford government has created a crisis of caring in this province, and it's led to the fact that now in Ontario, tragically, over 81,000 people are experiencing homelessness in this province. We will not solve this issue if we don't have the province back at the table with the finances needed to build homes with supports. That's why the Ontario Greens have committed to building 310,000 nonprofit and co-op houses so people have an affordable place to live.
And the leaders are also talking about these new potentially 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel. Premier Ford saying he spoke with those with Stelco and Dofasco. Merritt Stiles kind of changed her plan today. She was also speaking with steel workers in Hamilton. Send it back to you, too.
Okay, reporting live from the newsroom, CP24's Phil Perkins. Phil, thank you. And what that is now 5:48, feeling more like 13 below zero outside. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, more on our top story tonight. We have local reaction to Donald Trump's latest tariff threats. Will he make it official this hour? We're watching really closely. We'll be right back. Well, U.S. President Donald Trump has said he will impose 25% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum today, a move that could have a major economic impact.
CP24's Melissa Duggan joins us live from City Hall. This is where the tariff threat continues to grab a lot of attention. Melissa.
Yeah, we're getting reaction from City Hall today about this threat of tariffs, 25% on steel and aluminum coming from U.S. President Donald Trump. Mayor Olivia Chow talking about this today, and she's speaking just a day before we're expecting a big day here at City Hall. Tomorrow is when City Council convenes a special meeting. They're going to be reviewing Mayor Olivia Chow's budget for 2025, a budget that includes a property tax hike of 6.9%. And that averages out to about $270 more a year for the average homeowner of a property worth $700,000. But she was asked about this threat of tariffs, and I want to share some of her reaction.
It would have tremendous impact in Hamilton because of Hamilton is a steel town. It would have impact on Quebec because of Rio Tinto. As to precisely how it impacts on the city of Toronto, we need to analyze it. This is the thing. We have to be very strategic because it's going to be a chaotic 4 years. We know that. Okay? We have to be strategic. We have to know precisely what we are reacting to, and we have to target our support in the most intelligent way.
The way we protect ourselves against this threat is by making Toronto the most attractive city in the world to build a business, invest your capital, and create jobs. The way we get there is by creating a more competitive business environment today. Right now, that means lowering taxes to make Toronto more competitive with the U.S., to give our businesses a fighting chance, and to stand up for the more than 125,000 manufacturing jobs located right here in the city.
In reaction there from Councillor Brad Bradford. Expect to hear more reaction on this topic tomorrow here at City Hall. We're expecting the special City Council meeting to begin at about 9:30 tomorrow. But before that, Chow will be speaking, and expect her to be asked more about this threat of tariffs coming from the U.S. Back to you.
All right, Melissa Duggan reporting live from City Hall. Thank you, Melissa. And we have breaking news coming in from Washington just now. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. The aluminum and steel sectors in this country have warned this would be devastating for consumers on both sides of the border. There's already been talk of retaliatory tariffs on this side of the border. But again, if you're just joining us, we are following breaking news from the White House where Donald Trump has made it official. He is slapping Canada with 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel.
It's 5:55, holding at 5 below zero. This is Live at 5. We'll be right back.
It's been a long time since we've been able to do this.
U.S. President Donald Trump has announced plans to impose a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum products entering the U.S., including from Canada. Trump has said there will be no exceptions.
Yeah, a lot of people in the country were hoping the U.S. president would change his mind, but looks like that has not happened. Donald Trump making it official this hour. He is hitting Canada with 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum. Keep it here for the latest reaction. In other news, Canada will have its captain at the Four Nations face-off.
It's been a long time since we've been able to do this, and I think guys are excited from all the players, regardless of what country they're playing for. They seem to be really excited, and I would expect the level to be high, and I can't speak for fans, but I would think they would like seeing, a collection of players like this going head-to-head.
And Sidney Crosby's status was in doubt for the tournament because of an upper body injury. That kept him out of the Pittsburgh Penguins' last two games. The 37-year-old took part in Canada's first practice today ahead of the start of the tournament Wednesday in Montreal.
It is 5:58. -5 out there now. You're watching Toronto's Breaking News CP24. And as we mentioned moments ago, we're following breaking news out of Washington, where Donald Trump has made it official tonight. He is imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. We're watching this very closely, and we're going to be back with lots of reaction.
Yeah, we'll continue with local reaction throughout the evening. Thank you for watching. CTV News at 6 is next.